The auction yard went silent the moment the cages were rolled out. 12 retired police dogs, once fearless K-9 heroes, now trembled behind metal bars like criminals awaiting judgment. Their service vests were gone, tags removed, identities erased. These were the dogs who once took bullets for officers, now being sold to the highest bidder like worn-out tools. People pointed, whispered, "Too old, too slow, not worth keeping." A few men scoffed, "Old dogs, useless." Someone laughed, tapping a cage, but one dog wasn't trembling. A scarred German shepherd stared through the bars with eyes full of betrayal. And something else. Hoped. He lifted his head and stared at the crowd, his eyes filled with a pain so human it made people look away. And then Officer Grant walked in. He froze when he saw them, especially the shepherd who once saved his life. The auctioneer raised his gavel. First bid. When the auctioneer lifted the gavel, Grant stepped forward and said the words that stunned everyone. "Sir, I'll take all of them." No one there was ready for what happened next. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The sun hung low over the county auction yard, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. Officer Grant stepped out of his truck, expecting a routine inspection, but the moment he saw the cages, he froze. Behind the cold steel bars sat a line of retired K-9s, once proud, fearless warriors, now trembling with uncertainty. Their badges were gone, their collars faded, their eyes searching for the partners who'd never returned for them. Murmurs drifted across the crowd. "Too old," one man scoffed. "Not worth the money," another muttered. Grant's gaze landed on a German shepherd sitting perfectly still. This dog wasn't barking, wasn't pacing, just staring outward with heartbreaking clarity. Tears clung to the corners of his eyes, slipping silently down his muzzle. "Ranger." Grant felt his chest tighten. The auctioneer slammed his gavel. "First bid starts now." A surge of panic rippled through the dogs. Some barked. Others pressed themselves against the bars. Ranger didn't move. He simply looked at Grant, pleading without a sound. Grant's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, voice steady but filled with something no one could ignore. "Sir, I'll take all of them." Gasps erupted. Even the dogs lifted their heads, hope awakening like a spark in their eyes. For a moment, the entire yard went silent. Even the auctioneer looked stunned, his gavel frozen midair. Then a murmur spread through the crowd like a rising wave. Officer Grant felt eyes drilling into him from every direction. Sheriff Dalton pushed through the onlookers, his expression a mix of disbelief and irritation. "Grant, you can't be serious," he said, lowering his voice. "All of them? Do you even realize what you're taking on?" Grant didn't look at the sheriff. His eyes stayed fixed on Ranger, who still watched him with quiet desperation. "I know exactly what I'm taking on," he replied. Another officer scoffed. "They're old, injured. Half of them can't even run anymore." Grant finally turned, his voice sharper than before. "They're not equipment. They're heroes." The sheriff crossed his arms. "Then why now? Why take responsibility when the department already retired them?" Grant inhaled slowly, memories flickering behind his eyes. "Because Ranger saved my life," he said quietly. "Pulled me from a burning patrol car when I couldn't move. I owe him, and every dog like him, more than a farewell handshake." Ranger lifted his head, ears perking as if recognizing the words. The crowd softened, whispers shifting from ridicule to respect. Grant stepped forward, signing the final paperwork. This wasn't a mistake. It was a promise that Grant's ranch had never felt so full, or so quiet. The moment he opened the truck doors, the retired K-9s stepped out hesitantly, sniffing the unfamiliar ground. Some limped, others moved cautiously, their bodies stiff from years of untreated injuries. Ranger stayed closest to Grant, his eyes alert, scanning the area like a guardian returning to duty. Inside the barn-turned shelter, soft bedding and fresh water waited, but many dogs didn't approach it. A few crept into corners, trembling. One paced in circles, unable to settle. Another refused to lift his head at all. Grant knelt beside each dog, whispering reassurance. But their trauma ran deeper than he expected. The veterinarian arrived shortly after, her expression darkening as she examined them. Old fractures left to heal improperly. Nerve damage, scars from bites, burns, and years of training wear. "They've been pushed too far," she murmured. Grant's jaw clenched. These were not simply retired dogs. They were abandoned soldiers. Night fell, and the ranch grew still, until a sudden, panicked howl shattered the silence. A trembling K9 thrashed in his sleep, caught in a nightmare. Grant rushed to him, gently holding his shaking body until the fear subsided. A quiet moment followed. The timid dog slowly placed his paw on Grant's arm. For the first time that night, trust began to form. Morning came softly, spilling gold across the ranch. Grant stepped outside to find the retired K9s gathered near the fence line, watching him with cautious curiosity. Their bodies were still stiff, their spirits bruised, but something had shifted overnight. Something small, fragile, and hopeful. Grant knew this was the moment to start rebuilding them. Training began slowly. A simple call, a gentle command, a quiet reward. At first, most of the dogs hesitated, unsure if obedience would lead to punishment. But Ranger stepped forward, tail raised, demonstrating each command with calm precision. The others watched him closely. Then, one by one, they followed his lead. Days passed. Limping dogs began walking straighter. Nervous dogs learned to relax at Grant's touch. One shy shepherd, terrified of human voices, finally approached a child who had come to visit with her mother. The little girl giggled as the old K9 nuzzled her hand. His first moment of affection in years. Word of Grant's mission spread quickly. Neighbors arrived with supplies. Families offered to help socialize the dogs. Donations trickled in, enough to buy new gear, better food, and medical treatment. Grant realized these dogs weren't retired at all. They were healing, transforming, finding purpose again. And when one newly rehabilitated K9 rescued a lost child near the ranch, the entire town understood. These heroes were far from finished. The ranch had just begun to settle into its new rhythm when Grant's phone buzzed violently on the kitchen table. He glanced at the screen, expecting a routine check-in, only to freeze at the caller ID. The police department. He answered cautiously. "Grant, we need your help," the chief said, urgency dripping from every word. "A building has collapsed downtown. People are trapped. Our active K9 units are already deployed. We need more noses on the ground." Grant looked out the window at the dogs resting peacefully in the yard. They were older, slower, still healing. Sending them into danger felt impossible, cruel, even. But then Ranger rose to his feet, ears perked, staring directly at Grant as if he'd heard every word point one by one. The others followed, standing tall, alert, ready. Their bodies had aged, but their instincts burned just as fiercely as ever. Grant swallowed hard. "Chief, they're retired," he whispered. "Grant, lives are at stake." Ranger stepped closer, pressing his head against Grant's leg, a silent answer. Grant exhaled, heart heavy but resolute. "All right," he said quietly. "We're coming." Minutes later, the same dogs once deemed unusable were loaded into the truck, returning to the field no one believed they'd ever walk again. The rescue mission changed everything. By the next morning, headlines across the city praised the retired heroes who saved lives when no one else could. Families waited outside the ranch to meet them, offering love, donations, and homes. Grant knew this was the moment to turn his promise into something permanent. He stood before the crowd with Ranger at his side and announced the opening of the Retired Heroes K9 Sanctuary, a place where every former service dog could heal, train, and live with dignity. Cheers erupted. Children ran to greet the dogs, who responded with cautious but growing affection. Ranger remained with Grant, not as a retired dog, but as a partner reborn. As Grant watched the dogs playing freely, he whispered, "You've earned the rest of your life." Ranger leaned gently against him, finally home.